It's time now to take a look at this week's headline-making stories in our Reporters Rewind, and our guest at the round table, our author and freelance journalist Rob Smith. He is a frequent contributor to the Huffington Post, and he's new to our Reporters Rewind, so welcome to Arise America. And Serusha Govender is a South African freelance journalist living in the U.S., and she's an old pro here, and Wuyi Jacobs, who is host and editor of Afrobeats Radio. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Hey, good to see you, and welcome. Don't let these two elbow you out, okay?
I won't.
All right, you jump right on in. Let's talk about what everybody's talking about right now, and it's an old issue, quite frankly, that we don't seem to be able to unravel, and that is immigration. It seems now that the president is going to try to use the extent of his executive orders to try to get something done. I think, Serusha, I'm looking at you because I want to start with you. As I understand it, you're from South Africa, and South Africa has their own issues with immigration. Sort of give me your perspective as you've watched this unfold in the U.S.
Well, this mirrors so much about what South Africa is going through, particularly with Zimbabwe and other SADC countries, is that first you try to stop the immigrants coming in by putting up these borders, and then you go, well, we can't exactly do that. Let's look about integration, and then you end up pushing people back across the border, and they come back. And it's a system that is broken, essentially. It doesn't take into account human rights. It doesn't take into account moving economies and things like that work to support both economies in both countries. It's look out for ourselves first, and you're on your own approach. And the U.S. is taking this as well, and it hasn't worked anywhere else in the world. It isn't working in Italy and in Europe. It hasn't worked with the U.K. pushing out Eastern European immigrants. It hasn't worked in Africa. There's no reason it should work here either. And instead of taking a step forward, we just seem to be going round and round in circles.
We're definitely going round and round in circles. Your thoughts, Rob?
We do. Well, I think when it comes to the immigration issue, it's important that we do treat people as human beings, but we also really want to take the steps to secure our borders. You know, when the undocumented immigrant children are coming over the borders and they're kind of being taken in by these cities, it causes a strain on the taxpayers of those cities, and I really think that we have to look at that as well. But like I said, treat them like human beings.
Well, you know, it's so hard to get that balance that Rob is talking about. I think he's absolutely right, Wuyi. But then how do you show humanity to these children, in many cases, who really effectively are seeking asylum, but yet ensure the integrity and the infrastructure of our own country?
Well, I think the answer is pretty easy, actually, and they both touched on it. Showing humanity. I think what the Obama administration ought to have done is to really look at why people are leaving their countries. You know, that's the real thing. Why are those children running away from home? And if you address that problem, then you address the immigration problem. I think migration is a human right. It's a natural right. We have to stop looking at it from that other perspective that keeps.
But let me ask you this question, though, Wuyi, because I can see the argument from both sides, and I have my own opinions, but we're not here to talk about my opinions. However, there is a limited amount of resources in this country, particularly for social services, and so many of the immigrants that come here, whether they're minor or not, need those services, while we have residents of this country that needs their services. It's not a bottomless pot of resources, and so I can understand the argument that our government doesn't have the money to take care of other countries' children.
It's a good argument if we stop policing the world, if we stop extracting resources from other parts of the world without giving anything back. That's the reason why people are running away from their countries. So if things are correct in their countries economically, then perhaps, you know, less people will come, and more people will actually come as tourists and visitors and come spend their money. There's a need to readdress that whole immigration question.
But there's another big issue here, and the Honduran president brought it up this week as well, which is the huge criminal elements connected to the immigrations, that the U.S. plays a very big role in the fact that a lot of these immigrants, not the children sometimes, but are coming for drugs or, you know, human trafficking. And the U.S. isn't exactly cutting back on these issues and targeting drug cartels. It's targeting the whole immigration issue as a whole. And, I mean, sending kids back across the border and unaccompanied minors does not deal with the fact that the people running drugs and human trafficking and guns are still going about business as normal. So it's not taking into account all of these issues. It's, in fact, making it worse.
I see you thinking, Rob.
I was thinking. The wheels are turning here. You know, you said something very prescient. You said that America kind of needs to stop being world police. And as somebody who served, idea is always America first. You know, what are we doing for our citizens? Are we acting like we do not have citizens that are going through the same problems right now, you know, whether children or adult, that these immigrant citizens are going through when they're trying to come over here? So I think it's really important that we turn the attention back to America so that we can help our citizens first. Like I said, always have to treat them like human beings. It is a human right, but we still do need to focus on America first.
Very true.
Yeah, there's a balance there, and of course part of the controversy is where that balance is. Let's turn the corner, talk about something else. I want to talk about a story that hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention in the national media, and it might be unique to New York, but there's this interesting issue. There is a building, an apartment building that will be built here in New York City, and of course most New Yorkers, or many New Yorkers, particularly in Manhattan, live in apartment buildings. It's a luxury apartment building. However, so that it could get certain tax abatements and certain other amenities, it is opening a certain number of its apartments to quote-unquote low-income residents. So as not to offend the high-income residents that it wants to attract, it's created a separate entrance in a back alley for these low-income residents, something called the Poor Door. Rob, I see you shaking your head.
Shaking my head. Yeah. God bless America. You know, when I read the Poor Door story, it doesn't surprise me. So here's the thing. So we're talking about this complex that is about to be built right now. I actually live in Harlem on 116th Street, and there is a new luxury condo building that has gone up right next door to my building that has on the 116th Street entrance, that is the entrance for the condos, and then on 117th Street, the entrance is for the middle income housing people. It just kind of boggles my mind how we're doing that. And also, it's really important for people to realize that these aren't really low-income people. These are middle-income people. These are working-class, middle-class New Yorkers. And even the income restrictions for them, like $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. So we're not talking, you know, Section 8 or welfare. We're talking working-class, middle-income New Yorkers, and I think it's kind of abominable.
Well, this isn't the only building that this has happened to. This is an old legislation. Since 2009, it happened in New York, and plenty of buildings have gone up with this sort of poor door attached. But now this door is in the alley, so it's really putting this gap between the socioeconomic classes. And the issue is, are we saying that, okay, so a lot of people are in favor of the poor door that I've read around, because they say, well, people pay more, they should get access to better elevators, the doorman, pools, and all the accesses of the building, whereas affordable income people shouldn't. But this company is sort of not going according to the spirit of the law here. They're putting this entrance in a different place. They're putting a separate electrical system. People are just violating the spirit of the law by treating people differently, treating them worse. And I'm South African. This really reminds me of a little system we had a little while ago called apartheid,
yeah.
where we had separate doors for separate people, too.
And in these United States of America, something called Jim Crow.
Yes, yes, very true. That's what I was thinking about. Frankly, I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, come up with something. We're on live TV.
No, but for real, I mean, this is not new. It's been happening in our society. And I think I don't want to criticize Mayor Bloomberg, but to a large extent, in the past 12 years, we've seen a different New York City. Hopefully with the new mayor, we'll begin to reassess some of those things. But it's scandalous, I think.
Well,
it's everything that is un-American.
De Blasio said he does want to reassess all of those things, but the issue is, as I've done my research on this issue, a good deal of New Yorkers are in favor of the poor door, which really is talking about socioeconomic issues in New York City. The people who support things like stop and frisk for, that happen in lower income neighborhoods.
Well, it's interesting because anybody who lives in the city, you know that we live in a city that has multiple different, cities. There are the people that are the very wealthy and the people that are the very poor. And the interesting thing about living in New York City, and I've lived here for 6 years, is that you can have a condo that has $1, $2, $3 million penthouses literally right across the street from a project. That's never been able to kind of sit well with me, and I think it's very fascinating.
It is fascinating. It speaks to what I call the ism of the 21st century, which is not so much racism, but classism. Absolutely. It really does speak to that. This has been a great conversation, but we're going to have to stop it right now. Rob Smith, thank you so much for being here. Come back, okay?
Absolutely.
And my good friend Serusha Govender, Wuyi Jacobs, thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
You too.
We'll see you soon. And you're watching Arise America.